Great. Here's everybody. So now, since that felt like it took forever, you fully understand how it is that we experience time, not consistently minute for minute, but based on our experience. Some things feel like they take forever. Some things feel like they fly by. So that's what we're talking about today. How to fully experience your life on a day-to-day basis so the years don't just blur together and fly by in a rush.
One theory I have about this is that if you are working on routine stuff, habit stuff, getting tasks clicked off stuff, that makes the day fly in a bad way. That just makes the day just grind through. Oh, I got to go do the laundry. Oh, and then I got to go do this. When you do mundane things, you basically are surrendering those hours into the void of things that you're not going to remember. I think that's now whether or not they have to be done. We all know that they do, but whatever. I think the more time that you put into mundanity, you are surrendering it. But I do agree, and it's sort of like the book Flow by Csikszentmihalyi. That book says, that if you want to experience flow, you've got to really dig into something. So I think there are times when I lose track of time, but in the best of ways. And I feel like things like that matrix slowdown, I feel that when I'm trying something new or trying something where I haven't quite mastered it, that's, I think, where I feel that energy the most. Does that resonate with you?
Flow's a little different for me. So when you're in a flow state, you fail to realize time is flying by for you because you're so absorbed in what you're doing. So that's a little different because it's like time is flying, yes, but for a different reason because you're so absorbed in what you're doing. So that's kind of another possibility. One is time flies by because you're like working on an assembly line and you have to sort of mentally check out or you'll go nuts, like fully experiencing every second. The other end of it's flow where you're totally absorbed. And then kind of where we want to be, the sweet spot is you remember every day of the first time you tried parasailing, or you remember every minute of the first time you sat down on a cafe chair in Paris and started sipping a latte and watching people go by. Like you really are absorbed in that moment. So we kind of want both of those experiences, flow experiences that fly by because you're so absorbed, and sort of languorous experiences where you fully remember a really rich and interesting new experience.
Are there ways to kind of cue for that? Do you know what I mean? Like if you're in the middle of a moment, like you're having your cup of coffee in Paris or something like that. I remember, by the way, I was in Nice, France, which is, I think, in the south. Nice is nice. And I was having coffee and I was just sort of people watching and, of course, snapping a few photos as they were going by. And I remember thinking, I need to remind myself that I'm here in this moment. I'm curious, too, people who are watching this, especially if you're watching live where you can comment. I'm curious if does cueing help? Like, does that mean anything to you either? Like, have you ever tried that method, Carrie, where you say to yourself, I really want to make sure I remember this moment or something?
Well, first of all, can you still hear me? Because I changed my microphone.
I don't know because I shut the volume down so that I wouldn't make some weird echo by mistake, but try again.
Can you hear me now? Okay, super. For whatever reason, it decided it was going to pull from a different microphone. This is why we do live, because it's so interesting and every day is different. So very memorable experiences. I forgot what you would ask me now.
Is there a way one can cue oneself when they are in the middle of an experience that they want to remember? Is there some kind of way that we can interrupt and make ourselves connect?
That's so interesting. So I remember that before my dad was sick and he had cancer for like say 5 years between initial diagnosis. And I remember there were times during his treatment and stuff, I'd be on the phone with him and we would talk for a while. And sometimes you get distracted because you'd be like, this thing's going on. There's something going on outside. I have a work thing. And in those moments, I said, pay attention because you're not going to have a lot more conversations with your dad. Pay attention to this. This is important. And I remember thinking that to myself and I remember doing it. So I think that you can, as far as whether or not that actually is a substitute for trying something new, I don't think so. I think you can tell yourself to remember something specific. It will work. But if you want it to happen kind of organically, the only hack I've found is trying something completely different, out of your comfort zone, that shakes your brain up into thinking, oh, hey, hold on a sec. We need to fully document this because we don't have a reference point for this yet.
That I think is the cue. I think that's the difference is if we're doing something that we perceive as we already understand it, our brains are really apex at being pattern recognizers. Our brains say this is like this. And the minute we can discount something in a moment like that, that's when we kind of like shut off our brain and say, we don't need to think about anything right now. And I think that that might be the thing. So I wonder if that's like, for instance, I don't know if anyone's ever had this experience, like commuting, for instance, you are driving to work on a path that you normally drive on, etc. And all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I don't even remember the last like 10 minutes of a drive, because it's the same thing. And our pattern recognition just is watching for cars, which is a sort of low level thing for our brain to do while we're driving. Um, I wonder if there's ways to sort of disrupt pattern and say, let's make this different. Like you could make getting your if you drive by a place and pick up your coffee all the time, you could make a game of it almost and say, I'm going to check out how many people are wearing, what's the most predominant color that people are wearing when I go in, or something like that. There's definitely ways I think you can redisrupt the pattern. Do you remember in that article or what Brooke was saying, if they were talking like this at all? Like, was this part of their interest, or was it just more novel? Like, oh, that's interesting. If you want to have longer days, you got to remember the novel parts.
I'll share the research, but it had to do with following people who were doing the same old, and then following people who went out of their comfort zone to try something new. I do remember it didn't have to be a major departure. Like you didn't have to take a trip to Europe or skydive or something. It didn't have to be that dramatic. It could be as simple as taking a different route home from work, like not the same old one, so that you're seeing different things and taking different turns. So a little bit more about novelty kind of on a micro scale. You could go into a new place. We just this week, this is going to sound so dumb, but there is a place that is really hard to catch when it's open. It's one of those places that like locally sources food, cooks a little bit for the day, and when they're out, they're out. So who knows how long they're going to be open in a particular day. I've never caught them when they were open. This week we did. And I remember every part of the experience because it was novel. It's just like a little micro adventure.
Totally true. Totally true. And this is a place that, I mean, this town is like less than 2 miles across. It is a very small place. This place is about 250 footsteps from my house. And I'd never been in there in 2 decades. So I can tell you that, there are adventures waiting to happen. And I will say, so Carrie bringing that up, I was like, oh yeah, I was there. Um, I will say that that definitely added an experience to that day, because it really was a situation where it was vegetarian and vegan food. It was like a whole bunch of kind of cold foods that were interesting, like salads and things. It's a really neat, exciting time. Chloe, by the way, put up a comment. I'll read it, I guess. It says, sometimes when I think about a moment and put pressure on myself to stay present, it brings me out of the moment and away from the joy. Take on that?
That's completely fair. So it feels like work. Now you've taken yourself out of the enjoyment you were experiencing and made yourself do a thing, and that feels like work. So yeah, I understand that totally. I don't know. It's this is hard. This is sort of like meditation, which I know you practice. And if you're sitting there trying to meditate, you're going to think about stuff. And so you have to tell yourself, "Oh, I'm thinking," and then just let it go. I think you'd have to try and do something similar where you're like, "Oh, I really should try to stay in the moment and remember this." And be like, "You know what? I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to be present in the moment. That's how this is going to work." It's one of those things everybody will do, does do, and there's no way to avoid it. So rather than kind of dwell on it and make it worse, try to let it go.
That's interesting to think about. It sort of makes me think of those magic eye visual things where you have to sort of let your eyes go a certain kind of blurry. What I've come to learn is I do whatever the reverse of that is. I sort of cross my eyes in such a way that I can see there are two different types of magic eyes, as it turns out. The regular one that most people see, I can't see. I see it inverted. The one that is more for idiots like me who can cross their eyes, that one I can see. So, but it's like you have to force your eyeballs to do an opposite of what they want to do thing to get there. And I think it's harder to push that than it is to kind of land there, I guess. I think also, though, in structuring even a small part of our day to put something vaguely unique in it might be the secret to this. Do you have a feeling about that?
I think, yeah, if you were to start your day with something as different as, I don't know, like try Darjeeling tea instead of coffee one day or something. You might hate it. I'm not suggesting that all these things are going to be winners, but it will jar you into remembering that moment that you tried a thing. If you normally read business books to try and like hone your business skills in your off time, maybe don't. Maybe read some like I do, supernatural romance thrillers. Find some beach trash. Give it a try. You might hate it once again, but all you're really doing is reminding yourself that you're not just awake, you're alive. This morning, your eyes opened up, you're awake. Congratulations. That's table stakes. If you want to experience the world, if you want to be truly alive, you have to push yourself a little more. It doesn't have to be hard. Again, Darjeeling tea, any kind of thing. Go to a cafe you've never been to before. Walk a different route if you take your dog for a walk every day. I mean, make sure it's not like where there's an aggressive mother deer or something. Like pay attention to the posted signs, but try something a little bit different. And I've learned so much actually in the course of our adventuring around the local area that now if we're out and like I have to pee or something, I go, I know where there's a bathroom. Like you learn so many valuable things that is a very practical experience as well as a beneficial one for like your mental health and learning.
So the distance between awake and alive is pushing into some new experience, some new way to take on the world. I think it's interesting. You found that information, you were reminded of that article yesterday. You had seen it before back in the day. I think it's interesting that it's one of those lessons you have to reteach yourself over and over again. I'm pretty sure. I think it's one of those ones that's it's a hygiene kind of a thing to remember. But it is interesting. I think that what we remember most are those situations where something novel happened, but also novel, but there was some meaning to it. So that's my thought on that.
Did you ever do something that you were a little scared to do or take a class or something that you were intimidated to take because you didn't think you were kind of ready for it? Those moments in your mind seem to last forever. And that ends up being what sticks with me. I actually, in college, I'm a little sad about this now that I think about it, but I had gotten enrolled in a course I thought was going to be super fun, astronomy. And then I realized, in fact, it was mostly math. And I was like, that's a hard no for me. And so I got out of it. But now I think, I could have at least given it a week or something. I remember the moment where I was like, hell no. And I'm a little disappointed in my 17-year-old self.
Yeah, I think luckily, there's a lot of chances to redo this sort of a thing as well. Luckily, we have a chance to keep trying for it over and over again. And I think that's important. I think that what it makes me having brushed up on that again and figuring out how to slow down life, it is interesting. It goes to one of my 3 words for 2025, because one of the things that I wanted to make sure was that that I had more events. An event was one of my 3 words for 2025, because there's a big difference between just going somewhere and thinking of it like an event. Like a weird, easy example. You go to someone's birthday party. Now, of course, you think you got to bring them a gift. You got to wish them happy birthday. But if you structured the whole bit of what you're doing to like, how do I make this experience memorable for this person? You might think some different things. You might bring some different things. You might conduct yourself a different way at that party. So I think that in this same way, I think making an event happen every day one way or another, even if it's, mixed and matched between other stuff you're doing. I think that might be the key to it. Thought on that?
Well, I just sent you a link to Brooke's post in case you want to show everybody it. Not just because Brooke is worth following, but because that was her original. She's the inspiration kind of for today's post. She was thinking about high school and how those days sort of felt like they took forever. And if you remember back to your first job, you can probably relate. I was like 8 hours in this chair doing what?
I don't see the link that you said you sent me, so maybe it went to my.
It's in our studio chat.
Oh, one of 5 other places I could look for it. Hang on one second. Boosh, hang on. I got you. All right. Present the screen. Show this screen. Doosh. There we go. So you narrate here.
So I went looking at LinkedIn as one does, and Brooke Sellis is somebody I've followed, gosh, for a while. We presented together once in Pennsylvania at a marketing event, but at the time she was doing a whole lot with social media chat bots, for customer support and stuff like that. She's got a really swell agency if you're ever in the market for stuff like that. But this is what she said in her post. In high school, 7.5 hours felt like forever. Every class dragged. Every day felt endless. Now I blink and 7.5 hours is gone. Whole weeks disappear before I can catch my breath. I don't wish to be young again, but I do wish the days didn't slip by so fast, that life felt a little slower, a little longer. And lately I've been feeling the weight of how fleeting it all is, big moments and the small ones. So maybe the real work is learning how to notice them before they're gone. Do you ever feel that way too? And then she shared a picture of her and her best friend from high school from their yearbook. And I came along with that Guardian post and was like, heck yes, I've heard of this. And it is a known and documented thing. And here's some ways that you can kind of recapture that magic.
That's very interesting. So it was Brooke's post was the catalyst for this conversation, not the other way around. I thought she had referenced it because I was paying deep attention in that moment and didn't realize that you had glued these 2 things together. No wonder you make a show called Play for Time, you wizard.
So, Chris Brogan is a wonderful person and a very good listener sometimes. But the main thing here that we want you to take away from this, because it's the thing that we took away from it, was that it's really important to fully participate in life. Play for Time is all about staying engaged with life as you age. The prerequisite to that is being alive in the first place, like really truly alive instead of reactive or just kind of surviving. There's definitely times like the pandemic, for example, where we're just like all in survival mode. And that that's a blur. The whole pandemic is kind of a blur for most of us, right? Staying home, like using grown-up coloring books and like trying to find something on Netflix we haven't seen. We don't remember a lot of that because we kind of don't want to. So, but now we're alive, we're engaged, and we're going to stay that way because we don't want to lose any more time.
And that's why you're going to come here every Friday at 11 Eastern or watch this on recording whenever the heck you finally show up and see it, because that's what we do here at Ye Old Land of Play for Time. We do things like that. And also, go collect our crappy kid who's sick at work. So be good, play.